All right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to our fourth seminar in a series of five for our career search boot camp for graduating seniors. And as on cue, my phone starts ringing. Sorry about that. Today's seminar is going to be really a student perspective. We wanted to give you guys some observations from the field, if you will, some best practices from some of your colleagues that have been in the trenches with you and doing the career fair dance and the job search blitz, and have come up grabbing air on the other side with a success story to share with you. Each one of them is different, as each one of your stories will be different as well. There is no one way or right way. There's just, the way that you go about it. We give you some of our best practices, tips, tools, ideas along the way, but in the end, it's your path. It's your story to tell. But we've got two folks with us today, seniors that'll be graduating this semester. Sydney Hickmont, who's a senior in computer science and graduating in May, and I'll let her give more of an introduction here in a second. And then Matthew Donahue, who is a mechanical engineering senior, also graduating in May. Both have a story to tell. And so how we're going to run today's seminar is they're going to tell you a little bit about their experience here at Michigan State, some of the things that they did along the career search path that led them to what they're going to share with you in terms of their expected outcome at graduation. And then we're going to open up for questions and answers. So as you hear things that you want to double back and ask Sydney, Matt about, feel free to do that. Throw them in the Q&A and I will read them. And if it's a timely basis, I will interrupt one of them and ask that. But otherwise, we've got plenty of time saved after they make their opening comments to do Q&A as well. So I ask you to do that. I'll be along for the ride. If you don't come up with questions, I got some questions for them as well, but your questions are always more interesting than mine. So I would encourage you to do that. And I think sidestepping with us today is the incomparable Mr. Kyle Lichty. So we'll, at the end, we might have him comment a thing or two in terms of some observations as well. That being said, before we unleash everything, I do want to make sure that you're aware as well that tomorrow we have an employer panel. This employer panel is made up of the same employers that spoke to us back on July 30th and told us about what they expected to happen in the fall and their plans and ideas. So we're going to put them back in front of us, tell us about, okay, what happened? What did they see that was good? What did they see that needs to be improved? What are their expectations for spring and summer going forward in terms of recruitment and hiring for seniors? So we'll have folks from Target and GE, TechSmith and GM, auto owners, TechSmith, I think I said that, a couple other employers along the way, somebody from the state of Michigan to share with you their observations of what to expect. So that'll be tomorrow, the same link beginning at noon. And then we'll share this at the end as well, but just so you can connect with any of us at the end, I've got Sydney's LinkedIn profile and her email address up on the screen for you. And again, we'll share that before we end today, as well as Matt's, and then mine if you need to connect with me. All of us are on LinkedIn. All of us are using our MSU email addresses these days. And so all of us feel free to email us directly if you have questions after today's seminar. All righty. I'm going to stop share and I am going to turn it over to Ms. Hickmott to begin our discussion.
Okay, sweet. Thanks, Garth. So my name is Sydney, and I'm looking at the participants list, and I see a few people that I know, which is so embarrassing. So please don't judge anything I say. But yeah, I am a senior in computer science. And so I guess just to start off, I'll just give kind of like a background of the experiences that I've had and like in general, how I got those experiences. So I came into college with zero background in computer science. I picked it because it was the only engineering degree that didn't require me to take chemistry. So I didn't even know anything about it, but I came in and that very first career fair that we had. It was Partners Week. Probably had been at college for like 2 weeks. I went to the career fair and I talked to General Electric and I got an internship with them, which was something that I did not think was possible. I going off of my parents, what they had taught me, I thought that internships were something that juniors got, and that would lead into a full-time job. So I was not expecting it. And that experience just really came about because before I went to the career fair, I actually went to the center to get my resume checked out and reviewed. And not only did they give me a lot of help with my resume, but they pointed me exactly where to go at the career fair. They told me, go to GE. They hire freshmen like you who are like trying to go out of their way to find these things. And so really I owe that to the reason that I got my first internship. And then from there, things just kind of happened along with that really made things easy for me. So I worked at General Electric for that summer as an embedded software engineer. And then the next summer, I worked at General Motors as a central business operations intern. So super different, but again, the same thing. I got that one from going to the career fair in the fall at MSU. So that is just kind of really cool. And it showed me the importance and the success of those career fairs that are planned out for students to go and get opportunities at. So that was a great summer, super different than my summer at GE. Taught me a lot, taught me that I liked the business side of things more than the super technical software engineering side. So following that, this past summer, I had a 2-week internship at Deloitte because it got changed due to coronavirus. But yeah, so that was super cool. I worked as a cyber risk intern. So it was kind of a mix between the technical and business, which is exactly what I have been searching for. So I really loved that. The way I got that internship is a little bit more complicated, and I'll dive into that in a second. But that is where I'm going to be working full time as well. So the internship went great, even though it was only 2 weeks. It went great, and I will be starting there full time in the same role, basically, in about September. So that's super exciting. But the way that one came about, which is kind of my overall like success story, I guess I would say, on how this all came to be about, is to just always be curious and always be looking for different opportunities, no matter what they are. So, what happened with Deloitte is they had a pop up in the engineering lobby my sophomore year. I had no idea who Deloitte was, but for some reason, I went over and talked to them and I asked them what kind of company they were. And so, this is when I was a sophomore. I went over and I asked them what kind of company they were, what they did. Was there any opportunities for a computer science student? And we just had some chats there. And the man that I talked to was just super great. And he pointed me to a conference actually instead of an internship. He said that I probably wasn't ready for an internship with them based on my age, but this conference was going to be perfect. So I ended up applying for that conference and I went to it. They flew me out to Texas. And long story short, they invited me to another conference after that. And then they invited me to finally have an internship and now full time. So it's just that like progression of stuff that really is what I owe having the full time job with too. And so that kind of brings me to my overall point that it's these different experiences, no matter if they're an internship or a research position or a multiple day conference or a 1-day office tour. It's all these different things that allow you to just meet a bunch of different people, learn a bunch of things, find where you fit in and where you feel like your skills are wanted and where you find your passions and stuff. And that will make it so easy to find a job when you want it. And then the other thing I would say that has been super helpful to me overarchingly over the past few years is getting involved on campus. So not only working in this career office, I'm also involved in a couple engineering clubs. With Matt, we are like the co-presidents of the Engineering Society of Detroit. And so just these like different positions and organizations have really allowed me to meet so many different employers and just make all sorts of connections. I will say nothing, I haven't received an actual internship or anything as a result of those. But I think if that's something that I wanted, these allowed me to make tons of connections where it would have been very easy to contact somebody that I had met and inquire about positions within the company. So I think getting involved on campus is super important, especially with like clubs and stuff, but also like participating in any events that are put on by the university. So like career fairs or networking sessions or all that stuff. Just the more you put yourself out there, the more you're going to receive in terms of opportunities. So I think that's kind of like a gist of how this has all come about. So Garth, I don't know if you have anything to say, but otherwise I would just say pass it to Matt and he can kind of tell his side of the story.
Yeah, before we do that, a couple follow-up questions to you that I observed in you telling us about your story. So you had an early internship with GE, is that correct?
Yeah, after
So
my freshman year.
in your one of the questions I often get asked, and I want to see how you answer this, is students say, I interned here, but then I went on and interned other places. Did you ever reach back to GE for your full-time job opportunity, and or B, if you didn't, would you have if something else hadn't come along? Had you ever considered that, or had you crossed that one out? Tell us about the GE experience after the fact. Would you, could you, did you?
Yeah, for sure. So I think after the GE experience, I remained in contact with the lead recruiter there throughout my entire time at MSU. I still am connected with her on LinkedIn. I kind of, every summer that I didn't come back to GE, I kind of gave her like an update and explained what I was doing. And she was always so happy for me and so excited to see my like portfolio like diversifying. But every time she would say like keep us in mind for full time. And so I did. When full time came around, when it came time to think about that, I got my Deloitte offer super early and I accepted it super early because I knew it's what I wanted. But I absolutely thought about applying to GE. Especially they have like, I don't know if anybody's familiar, but they have an amazing graduate rotational program where you get your master's. So I definitely thought about it. And I'm still in good contact with my connections there. So in the future, if I was interested in an opportunity at GE, I think that that would definitely be something that could happen.
I think that's an excellent point. These contacts are going to go beyond just your time in school, and so I think people need to be aware of that. Second thing that struck me, and just wondering, because again I get asked this a lot. So if I followed your story correctly, you worked at Deloitte this past summer in a virtual experience, correct? So
Yeah.
now you've accepted at Deloitte. Any trepidation that you've never physically been there, that you've never physically been in an office? Did that weigh on you in accepting this decision? And if it did, how did you kind of work through it?
For sure. So I think in so no, it does not. And that's because I have already had so much experience with them. So like I said, I've gone to 2 different conferences with them that were each 3 days long. So I got to see their facilities. I got to meet countless number of their people, just really understand how the company works, what they do. I've also they do tons of networking events for everyone that's involved. So I've gone to all of those. I've done a day in their office. So I really feel like even though I've only had like a 2-week actual internship with them, all the other experiences that I've had with them have built up like sufficient information for me to know that this is the right choice.
Okay. And then the last thing I wanted to ask you, you had mentioned some of your groups and affiliations on campus. Anyone or anything from those affiliations that stood out in your search, maybe not directly, but indirectly, in terms of information, opportunity, anything in terms of help with that, either directly or indirectly, that you want to mention?
Yeah, for sure. So the 2 organizations that really helped me the most would be Phi Rho, which is the engineering sorority. That one helped me a lot in allowing me to meet so many different women in engineering and just getting to hear their stories and their experiences. It kind of made me interested in some companies and then it like made me uninterested in other companies, just hearing what they all had to say. And then that's also just like a great resource for interview prep or like career advice or anything like that. So I would say the girls in that club really helped me out in like steering me on the right path. And then the other organization that I already mentioned I was involved in is ESD. And that one, it helps me in two reasons. It allowed me to make a lot of really important and really cool connections in the professional world, just with different events that we're throwing on and different things that we're invited to and get to go to. My summer that I was working at GM, I got to meet the president of General Motors. So that was like super cool through ESD. But then the other way that ESD prepared me well for full time is that it gave me a lot of different experiences and skills that I could talk about in interviews. So I think that that is like another thing that goes along with kind of my overall point, is just having these diverse experiences allows you to talk about so many different things in your interviews and just like lets you bring so much to the table.
I do have a couple questions, but I'm going to hold those and let Mr. Donahue go next, because
Sounds
I'm
good.
also going to ask those same questions to him. So go ahead with it, Matt.
Thanks, Garth. Hi, everyone. My name is Matt. I hope that kind of after listening to Sydney's story and listening to how she conducted her college search, I hope that my story is a bit of fresh air for all of those people who may not have been as proactive or going out and doing things. So I came into MSU as a chemical engineer, and I went to the career fairs, same as Sydney, and unfortunately I didn't have the same success. A lot of the companies told me you need to be at least a sophomore, need to be at least a sophomore. So I made a lot of great connections. I was ready to move forward. And then I decided to switch my major to mechanical engineering. And most of the companies that I had talked to were specifically looking for chemical kind of niche market companies. So all of those connections that I had made are kind of thrown down the drain. So I used a connection from someone I knew back in my hometown, and I was able to get an internship after my freshman year at ZF. So that's kind of like my first instance of using a connection. And there I worked on reliability testing within their occupant safety systems division. So again, it's a very niche market. We're only working with the safety systems of the automotive industry, not necessarily the broader automotive industry. And it's only a supplier. It's not one of the big three. Over the next few years, I applied. I went to all the career fairs, but I never really prepared beforehand. I kind of walked in, said, "This is my stuff. This is who I am, blah, blah, blah." And they said, apply online, apply online, apply online. Sometimes I would, sometimes I wouldn't. Never had a lot of success. I talked to Kyle a few times when Kyle was kind of pushing me forward and saying, "You should try this experience. You should try this experience." I had a lot more success when I applied more effort. But when those opportunities didn't quite work out, I never applied more effort, and I didn't end up getting any other offers. So I returned to ZF after my sophomore year and working in a different division, but again, same experience. I'm working with automotive safety systems, testing seatbelts, airbags. I went from testing parts on machines to doing live crash tests. That's really the only difference that I made. So again, I'm still kind of pigeonholing myself. I still don't have a lot of diverse experiences like Sydney does, and I still don't have a lot of connections. So then junior year rolls around, and I do the exact same thing at the career fair. Fast forward, now we're past the career fair, and I decide that, maybe it's time, like it hits me that I'm going to be moving into my full-time job search, and I should probably start putting more effort in than I have in the past. So I start trying to put more effort in, and all these companies came to me and said, FCA in specific was the one that I was trying to, because I could see myself working there full-time. They said, "Where were you in the fall?" And I said, "I don't know." I was just kind of banking on going back to ZF. And they were like, "Well, let's try to get you an internship." Other companies had the same thing. They were trying to push me through based on the experiences that I've had, which was new to me. I didn't think my experiences were all that special. So newsflash, you should be self-confident. And as I kind of went through that process, none of those opportunities opened up. So I went back to ZF. Unfortunately, 2 weeks before the summer internship started, I got an email from ZF that they were canceling my internship due to COVID-19. The interesting thing was that I was the only location at ZF that had their internships canceled. So a lot of other locations were able to keep their interns on. I was at a location where the interns were axed. So now I'm kind of without a job going into the summer. So I enrolled in the virtual internship experience, and I'm kind of moving into my senior year with no real job prospects. I'd reached out to the connections that I had at ZF, and they're like, "Things are tight. We're not hiring." So fortunately, I had started a little bit before with FCA, and some of the recruiters that I were talking to were saying, "Yeah, we'd like to look at you for some of our positions. The problem is the budget hasn't been approved yet because of COVID-19 and restrictions." So now I have no connections. I'm basically starting from ground zero. I know what to do, but I haven't really done it. So obviously I talked to Kyle, talked to Garth, got all my things in order as far as resumes, handshakes, LinkedIn profiles, everything's ready to go. And then I did what you were supposed, that Garth and Kyle and Rachel, they all say to do at the career fairs. You go in, you're prepared, you have a plan, you do research on the company before, you reach out to the employers if you know who they are. And I think that I really benefited from the virtual career fair. One of the benefits that you have at a virtual career fair is you sign up before. So the recruiters know who's coming in when. They have access to your resume before. So instead of me having to come in and give some elevator pitch that's supposed to convince you that I'm worth hiring and spending all of this money on in 30 seconds, you can look at my resume ahead of time, and you know whether or not I'm going to be a viable candidate or not. So I would go into my the virtual career fairs, and I would say, okay, these are some of the questions that I have about your company, and I can direct the questions at them instead of them being at me. So now the recruiters can say, okay, this student looks great on paper. We just need to make sure that he's good in person. And then I present myself strongly in person. Or the representative from the company says, we don't really like this candidate. And I still come in asking questions. So then they're saying, oh, maybe I was wrong about this candidate. Now I'm more impressed with them. So either way, it's kind of a win-win situation for me. And from those career fairs, I was able to, and applying on Handshake, applying to LinkedIn jobs, I probably applied to around 30 jobs. And I was able to go through the interview process with 15 different companies. One of those was a first round. All the rest at least went to a second round. And now the company that I'll be working for, BAE, I'm enrolled in their engineering leadership development program. I had never talked to BAE before in my life. I went to the virtual career fair, messaged the recruiter, not even before on Handshake, but after I had spoken with her. I kept in touch, and then she kind of pipelined me into the recruiting process, set me up for success, and then everything just kind of unraveled from there, and that's where I'm at. So I guess my biggest advice is for all those people who have done things right, good for you. Please use those connections, utilize the relationships that you've made. That's by far the easiest way to do it. It's how I got my first internship. And for those of you who haven't, don't be afraid, because there's still time to do it. You're just going to have to apply a little bit more effort and be more intentional with how you go about networking.
So very different experience than Sydney. It looks like you really had put in a lot of effort and got some great results from the fall career events. So talk to us a little bit about, you were saying you did research ahead of time, you would link in with them. Take us through just one successful, and let's use BAE, I guess, but you can use it now if you want to. Take us through kind of just the time frame of, okay, I saw they were coming to the career fair. Here's where I did the research. Here's where I concentrated on. Here's what I utilized in this. And here's where I think it really went well for me.
Okay, so I always started with, this is a very engineering type approach. It's very systematic.
I think we have mainly a group of engineers. So that's good.
So that's gonna be good for us. But I kind of started with going through on Handshake and picking my appointments, making sure that I could maximize the touch points that I had with different companies. I think in the first career fair, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 3 hours that we had set up for the first career fair that we did. I had 2 sessions that weren't booked. So I had 2 10-minute gaps. So engineers can do the math of 10-minute sessions, 3 hours, 18. So I had 16 out of my 18 slots filled. Obviously, some of those were going to be the longer presentations. Some of those were going to be one-on-ones. Once I knew what my one-on-ones were, I went to the company website and found a job. I wanted to make sure that I at least had a spot with that company if it was a company that I was interested. And then I went online to find the positions that aligned with what I wanted. So in the case of BAE, when I went online, I hadn't really seen anything the 5 days before the career fair. I was actually thinking about dropping that because there was no positions that were really a good fit for me. And I decided that I was just going to keep it. The day before, I found out about the position got posted for the engineering leadership development program. So I clicked on that. I read through the job description, looked at the requirements, saw that I met the requirements, and I went ahead and applied. Once I knew that I had an application into BAE, that's when I knew that I needed to take it a little more seriously as far as my intentionalness with my approach. So I went online, looked at the types of work that they did. I've worked in a lot of testing. I'm more interested in design. So I don't have a lot of great experience. I know that's where I'm trying to go. So my job was kind of to use what they had on their website to build myself a bridge. So I would say I'm super interested in testing. Obviously, at BAE, you're working within the defense industry. The defense industry has less standards to me as far as safety goes because, in the automotive industry, we're working to keep customers and consumers safe. Where in the defense industry, you need to make sure that your technology is better than everyone else's in battle. So you're going to redline your technology a little bit more, and safety, while it's still paramount, takes a little bit of a back seat. So from my perspective, as someone who wants to be a designer, I want to be working with the most up-to-date technology, the cutting edge stuff. This is a great position for me. I don't have a lot of design experience coming in, but I do have a lot of testing experience in my back pocket within automotive. So I understand how the testing process works. I understand what we're going to need to do. So when I become a designer, I'll be able to better make products and vehicles and missiles and aircrafts and everything that BAE does because of those skills. And then once I kind of say why I'm qualified for what I'm trying to get through, then I would tie in why I want it. So obviously with BAE, you're working with the defense contractors. Here in America, we have a lot of liberties and rights that a lot of other countries don't have because in large part because of our military protecting us. So for me to be able to say, yeah, I'm really excited about being able to give back to the military, the people who give me all of these opportunities that I have, working for a company like BAE is a great opportunity for me to kind of give back to those people and make sure that I'm doing my part to protect them as well. So that was kind of my BAE pitch. And that's kind of how I went through with each company, if that makes sense. It's kind of find the position that you want, figure out where you want to go, and then use what you have on paper to kind of build that bridge to convince the recruiter that you're the right fit.
Okay. And then, Sydney talked about, she had her internship with Deloitte this past summer. It was microsized. It was put online. Your experience with ZF was canceled. You didn't get anything with Fiat Chrysler. So talk to us about how did you explain your summer experience to BAE and the other employers? Did they worry that you didn't work this past summer? Did they question you about that? How did you present it? How did you talk about it? Or how did you avoid talking about it if that's what you did?
I think that the best way I went about it was kind of to be upfront and honest about it and to say why it matters, right? So for me coming in, like I had a lot of high school coaching experience, completely useless in the engineering world on paper, right? There's not a lot that translates between sports and engineering, but there is if you know how to pitch it. So I would always say, like, I know how to work with people, communicate, leadership, blah, 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 blah. All that stuff matters. It's all about how you twist it. So when I didn't have an internship opportunity this summer, it kind of shows like, okay, you've been beat down. They threw you out. I mean, it's not like I didn't do all the work, right? So I was thrown out. It's like, how do you get back up? So for me to say, well, I enrolled in the virtual internship academy. I learned a lot about this and that. I learned how certain industries work, certain industries don't work. I took the time to figure out where I want to be when I come to a full-time job position. So now it sounds like, okay, he lost his job. Now he's doing research about jobs he could want in the future. Obviously, this is a person who puts in preparation ahead of time. If he's putting preparation ahead of time now, he's going to continue to do that in the future. So that kind of showcases a skill set. I just tried to showcase as many of these different skills that I had obtained throughout my time. And even over that summer when I wasn't working, I was just taking a class online, doing the virtual internship academy, and trying to display that I'm still a learner despite not having that internship. So I tried to avoid it as much as possible, other than that quick spiel that sounds really good.
And then finally, I know how much you wanted and how hard you worked on getting the Fiat Chrysler opportunity, and it just didn't work out timing wise for you. How have you left it with Fiat Chrysler? Is that door closed permanently? Tell us about both how they're looking at you potentially for the future. Do you expect to keep that conversation going, or just where have you left it with Fiat Chrysler?
The program that I wanted with Fiat Chrysler, just for everyone else, obviously, I know you know this, Garth, from our conversations, but it was a program that was a rotational program that also paid for my master's degree. And it's obviously one of the top programs. I knew that if not being an intern and wanting that program, I would have to network and communicate ahead of time to get myself on the radar, which I did. And unfortunately, it never got posted. So going into my BAE recruitment, I knew in the back of my mind, like FCA was what I wanted more than anything because of the opportunity that presented. Unfortunately, BAE was able to basically meet that. I will still get my master's paid for through the program that I'm in. So there was never really an opportunity. There's no real reason for me to go back to FCA. However, in the future, this is the kind of the Metro Detroit areas where I grew up, and that's where I want to live. So I still kept in touch. I'm still talking to the recruiters, keeping them updated on what I'm doing, and letting them know that, hey, I'm in this 3-year program. It's essentially the same as what you've got with your CIE program. I'm going to have a different set of experiences, but hopefully in the future, like I will be able to work at FCA. So even though basically they kind of hit the pause button on me because they didn't have the position posted. So I've kind of turned the table and said, well, 3 years from now, I would still like to come work for you. And I've built good relationships with those people. So in 3 years, let's be in touch kind of approach.
Okay. And then to finish it off with you, Matt, you alluded to this. I'm going to give the exact quote from Rocky. Rocky says, you, me, and nobody going to hit as hard as life. But it ain't how hard you hit. It's about how hard you get hit and keep moving forward. That's what you did. You kept moving forward. Even ZF thought they knocked you down, knocked you out, but you got back up.
That is correct. So, I mean, just kind of to go on that, like you've got to make sure you're finding new opportunities. I applied to some of the companies that I went through. I went through interviews with Intiva. I've never heard of Intiva before in my life, but when I interviewed, I was very interested in all of the things that Intiva did, and I knew all about them. I interviewed with OPW, which is actually a huge company. I'm sure none of you have heard of it though, because I obviously hadn't, but they actually make the gas nozzles at every gas tank or every gas station. So every time you fill up gas, you're using an OPW product. So finding those little niche things, it's not my best advice to leave everyone with is it's not always about that big name. I mean, if you go to a big name corporation, like when I was at ZF, I had a great name. I was a test services intern. I was also a reliability lab technician. I can spend all this time selling you down the river about how great my experiences was because I worked at a tier 1 automotive supplier. But in reality, my day-to-day job was to take seatbelt retractors, put them on a fixture, put them in a machine, hit the play button, and watch it happen. If something goes wrong, I call an engineer to come down and then tell them what went wrong and then watch them work. That was my entirety of my experience. So I was able to leverage that, but in reality, I didn't do that much or learn that much. If I had gone to a smaller company, they might have said, hey, freshman Matt, we've got this project, go do it. And I have no knowledge, no whatever, just because that's the way that smaller companies tend to operate. They're more focused on the outcome, and there's not rigid systems in place. Obviously, that's one of the benefits of going to a big company, but to say that going to a small or medium-sized company is less of an opportunity than going to a big company is kind of ridiculous, because you're going to get crazy, interesting experiences at a small company, and you can leverage that to go to a big company in 3-5 years. So in reality, be open to all companies, and I think that all of you are going to be able to have success.
You've gotten so smart in your old age, Matt. I'm so
I
proud of you.
I know.
Well, at this point, we've got about 10, 12 minutes left. I want to open it up for questions from the group. So again, if you want to drop something in the Q&A, or if you can't find that, but you just want to do it in the chat, I'm going to monitor that and see if there's anything for Sid and Matt. Before I go to that, I have one question for the two of you. Obviously, it sucked. I mean, COVID sucks. And, you guys got a quick taste of it in the spring, but heading into your senior year, there was hope that we were going to be in person. There was hope that we were going to do this, but you guys have had to, as Rocky said, Kate, knock down and keep going. So if you look back, was there one moment, was there one thing, was there one piece of advice, was there one thing that you'd done in the past, was there one thing you doubled down on that's led you to this successful outcome even through all of this crap? And if it's something you've already said but you want to double back on, be my guest. Or if it's something that comes to mind when I ask that question, you can go with that. We'll have Sydney go first and then Matt.
Yeah, so I already mentioned it, but honestly, coming into, and this is not a plug, but coming into the center my freshman year, like one of the first weeks of college, that is really what put me on the path to success, I think. And to generalize that, I think just asking for help and getting advice from people who have been there and people who know better than you, that is so important. And I think, kind of like Matt touched on, there's nothing wrong with like trying to get connections from people your parents know or your friends' parents or stuff like that. Just asking for help, and acknowledging that you can't go through this process all by yourself because we don't know enough. So yeah, that's my answer.
And Matt?
And I guess my answer would be during the virtual, it's a weird answer, but during the virtual internship experience, I attended a session. It was about self-care and utilize it, how to better use your phone to live a healthier lifestyle. And the gentleman spoke for over an hour about how he was doing different things with his phone and how it was improving his life. And then they had a slide at the very end that showed his history of who he was and what he was doing. And he wasn't a doctor, he wasn't a psychologist, he was just an author. He had kind of diverted his career path in that way, to be talking about self-care, and how to better manage your own health. And to me, that blew me away because as an engineer, we're taught to go to the experts, right? When a seatbelt part broke, I would go to the expert on that part. And seeing the success that he was able to have, even though he hadn't really had any medical training or anything like that, he was just kind of going with what he'd done throughout his life, showed me that the things that I've done in my life, whether they apply or not, are applicable to everything that I do. So it kind of changed the way that I framed my resume, changed the way that I framed myself in internships. And that's kind of that was the turning point for me. It showed me that even though I really don't have all that great experience technically and everything, that I still do have great experiences elsewhere.
Little value prop going in there. I like it. We did get a question from one of the attendees. They ask, I will be graduating in December. When should I start applying for full-time roles? And how should I go about applying full-time versus when I've applied for internships? Anybody want to take that one?
You got it, Matt.
I would say apply now. So I was looking for jobs in whenever we started the spring semester, so August, September for May. So it's about the same time frame, a little longer in your case because there's a summer semester in there. But I would say start applying now, not intensely like I was, where you're applying to 15, 30, 40 jobs, but look for jobs that you're super interested in. Those are the jobs that you should be applying for right now, because if they're hiring in December, usually a lot of the programs roll over. So they take this many people in the spring, they take this many people in the fall. There is absolutely no problem at all with you getting in on the May recruitment. So you should be going through the interview process, doing all of these things. And if they like you, they'll either say, hey, we're only hiring for May right now. So we really like you. We've got you flagged in our system. You've made a bunch of great contacts. Now you'll do it again in the fall semester. Or they'll say, we really like you and we want to take you now for the December hire. We'd like to hire you now. So being able to have that opportunity. And then obviously if it doesn't work out, you still have 7 months to go find a different opportunity. So I would say just choose the ones that are most interesting to you, apply to those now, and then do more of the mass application later on if you don't have a position lined up. But people are looking right now, so there's no shame in looking right now.
And simultaneously applying for internships as well, correct?
Correct, yeah. And as far as the differences between the two, in my opinion, there's not really a lot. The full-time interviews tend to be a little more in-depth, more intense. So I tend to basically treat the process as the exact same, but I know that for a full-time job, it's going to take a lot more work on my back end as far as research and being prepared for interviews. Whereas internships, I'm a little bit more relaxed because I know the questions aren't going to be as intense or as in-depth.
Sid, I didn't mean to cut you off. You were going to comment?
I was just going to say the same thing that he just said about the difference between the applications.
And I would add too that, you can double down on this. So, those companies that you're looking at full-time, you can say, hey, I still have another summer too. So if you want to see me as a little preview show, I can work for you this coming summer, and vice versa. Those employers that are looking at you for an internship this summer, hey, I'm going to beat everybody to market. I'm going to be available in December, so we got a fast path to full time. and I could stay with you maybe in some kind of consulting part-time role while I'm schooling my last semester. So those might be options as well.
And
Matt
Garth,
Smith,
to add to that,
go ahead.
that's great advice because I did that with BAE. I was interested in BAE and I tried to get a spring co-op that I would then be easier to roll into a full-time position when I had graduated. So that's great advice.
Excellent. Matt Smith writes, similar to Matt, that's you, Matt. I lost my internship this summer due to COVID. I'm a student who's interested in the biomedical healthcare industry, but unfortunately this summer was supposed to be my first industry experience in that industry. Didn't happen. What are the best ways to build bridges during career fairs, interviews, when you lack industry experience that other candidates may have? Anybody want to take that one?
Yeah, I can take this one actually. So my job at Deloitte is kind of the same situation. I'm totally in like the cybersecurity area, which I have literally zero clue about. I've never taken a class on it. I didn't even really know I was interested in it. But it's just kind of what happened, and I do like it now. But I was like worried about the same thing. Like I have no idea what cybersecurity is. There's colleges where students have this specific major. How am I supposed to compete with them to get this job? And I think that what you have to think about is that, first of all, the recruiters acknowledge that everybody is kind of at different levels in what they know and what their experiences are. Something that I think about a lot and that I've learned through different internships and stuff is the material and the knowledge that you need to have to be successful in any internship or job. They teach you once you get there. You need to come in with an open mind and the ability to learn and the ability to critically think. But the things that you actually need to know to succeed at that job, they're going to teach you. So I think just like having the confidence in the back of your mind that you don't need to know everything about like the healthcare or the biomedical industry prior to your job is important. You'll learn so much of that on the spot. But in terms of like, obviously they do want to see some connections and stuff. So I think that's where you want to rely on your passion and your interest, first of all. So really convince them that this actually is something that you're interested in, even though you don't have like prior experience in it. It's still something that you are being intentional about and applying for. And then I also think that find opportunities to learn about it, even if it's not industry experience. For example, I am participating in a cybersecurity case competition in February that I'm probably going to get last place at because I don't know a lot about it, but I'm hoping that that teaches me. So then when I go into my job at Deloitte, I can maybe know a little bit more. So I think just like try and find little opportunities, no matter how big or small, to learn a little bit more about the healthcare industry and to build your resume or just your knowledge just a little bit more.
All right, we are almost at time here, so I'm going to ask one real quick final question and any additional comment that you two want to make. So let's play an evil game on you. One that Matt has already experienced in his co-op internship. Tomorrow you get a phone call from BAE, you get a phone call from Deloitte saying, sorry, but it ain't gonna work out. We hope that you won't think evil of us, but we're gonna have to rescind our offer to you. Best of luck and good tidings for you. After you get through what are your next steps? What are your next thing you do? Quick advice here, nothing long, but what do you then jump in? How do you reverse that trend? It can be, again, something that you said. What are you going to go back to? What are you going to do? How are you going to handle this thing? And since Sid, I made you go first last time, I'll let you think about it. I'm going to make Matt go first on this since he's actually experienced it.
I think that the first thing you do is you reach out to connections. I can tell you that based on how my senior job search went, as long as you conduct yourself with the utmost professional manner, you're going to be in great shape. So I guess I know I interviewed with OPW, I interviewed with Intiva, I interviewed with another company that currently slips my mind. And in each case, they had called me back ready for another interview for the position that I had applied to. And I told them, I'm sorry, I can't continue. I accepted a job at BAE. The reason I accepted this position is because it's very similar to your program and it's a rotational program, but it also has an added master's. program, and as someone who wants to continue their education as of right now, this is the best fit for me and where I want to go. However, I will definitely be open and remember you. I had a great experience. The interview process was great, especially being virtual and not being able to see things on site. And I had this whole little spiel that I would give, and I would say, best of luck with the rest of your search. Every time I sent that email, they would say, thank you so much for taking the time to reach out. If anything falls through or something happens, do not hesitate to reach back out to us about future opportunities. So by conducting yourself appropriately throughout all of the interviews that you go through, you're basically building a bridge to a bunch of different jobs, and you just get to pick at the end which one. So that's kind of my advice.
Sid?
Yeah, I would say mine is honestly the same, connections. I have had my full-time locked in since July, which is amazing. But over the past few months, I've like started to fear that I'm getting too like complacent and I'm feeling too secure because yeah, we never know what's going to happen. I mean, especially in today's day and age. And so over the past few months, I've began like networking again with like other companies and stuff and being very transparent about I have a full-time offer. I am not looking for work. However, I would love to talk to you more about your company and learn about maybe what I could do for you in a couple of years, how I would fit in. And so those conversations have been going really well. It's nice to kind of just like keep your like skills up and the way you talk to people and the way you sell yourself. So I would reach out to those new contacts that I've created over the past few months, and then also my contacts from my previous experiences. Luckily, those have all resulted in like really good relationships. So yeah, exact same answer as Matt, but just relying on the people that you know to kind of figure something out.
All right. As we finish up here, I'm going to pop up again one more time our contact information. Do I have the right screen up?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Our contact information so that you can see that. And if you need to or want to reach out to Sydney, Matt, or myself, you can do that.